Hi, welcome to Project Rose and Quartz, where we are going to take some rose quartz and a rose and put it in some resin. Stick around. This is a little sculpture that I've put together. It's utilizing an old crystal that I showed you guys earlier, one of the roses from the Mother's Day bouquet, a few of the dry leaves, and just a bunch of like little pearl beads I have, and I've glued them down on a cardboard that has been covered with packing tape that is really like smooth on the outside, so hopefully the resin won't stick to it. Okay, so we've got our sculpture in the box that has just been made and taped up and sealed top to bottom so that you can't have any leakage. And if we look directly on top, we can see we've got some gaps on the sides all the way around to make sure that when we pour our resin, it will give a barrier of resin to the sculpture. Some spots are a little tight, like this little spot here, this little spot behind the leaf. Everything is glued in place. And now we're going to wait and see what happens when we pour the resin. The box held up aces. It was really great. It actually came off quite easy with a little bit of prying. You can see it opening up here. However, what ended up happening was there was a bit of a flash cure. It happened because I am using a small pour kit, and this is a deep pour. Rookie mistake, absolutely. And what ended up happening is it cured within like, I want to say 3 to 5 minutes. It got incredibly hot, and because it cured so quickly, it trapped a whole bunch of air bubbles in, which you can see here in this shot. And so it's gonna need some fixing. The fixes entailed using a pipette and pipetting resin into as many of the bubbles and holes on the bottom as I could, and essentially like forcing or pressuring the resin into as many of the crevices as I possibly could. Unfortunately, I couldn't get rid of a lot of the bubbles that were inside, obviously, so they're just going to be part of the sculpture right now, an added bonus. But I did manage to fix up quite a few little bits and pieces on the bottom that weren't looking very good. So the next step is a bit of a sand. So outside we go. We're taking a sander to those edges first. I've just finished sanding down the cube with the quartz and the rose in it, and the reason I've done that is because it had a lot of bits and pieces in there that weren't really good. Like I said, it had a flash cure, so there was lots of bubbles in it. We had some like holes and stuff on the bottom that I had to patch up. So I've spent the last sort of 20 minutes giving it a good old sand. We just took 240 wet and dry to it, and that seems to scuff up the surface. We want to create a bit of a tooth for the next layer of resin to actually grip onto. I'm going to clean it out, give it a good old wash and let it dry, and then we're going to start resining each face of this cube. We're going to attempt to dome this each side. And what that means is that we have to add resin really carefully until you get like surface tension, and it creates a slight dome shape, not too much, but just enough for it to look nice and polished. So we have to do that 6 times. The best thing I like about resin is it starts off really beautiful, and then when you take it out of the mold, you notice all its flaws, and then you start to kind of try and fix those flaws, whether that's sanding or filling in, you know, little bubbles on the surface wherever you can, and then you sand it down and it looks terrible, and then you put the final touches on it with a resin coat and it just turns out gorgeous. It's kind of mirrors life, I guess. You start off all beautiful, then you get jaded along the way, and then you heal yourself, and then you come out beautiful on the other end. So we'll see how that goes anyway in terms of this piece. But I think it should be okay. Welcome to day 176 of this rose quartz cube. Nah, just kidding. It's like day 6 or something. I don't know. Yesterday I did a little bit of a dome flood coat on top of the piece. So this is the very top. We have to do that another at least 4 times. And then we are going to do a thicker, probably like I'll need a mold, create a mold for it, but a pour to lock in a base of glitter, this glitter, to finish off the piece. So we've still got a way to go, but at least the top surface is pretty much done. You can see I've got like a big sort of puddle of resin, and I am carefully spreading it all around, and what will end up happening is eventually I'll pour a little bit more once my hands are free, and then I will make sure that I keep going until I've got some surface tension. You can sort of see like a little dome. That's sort of what we're going for, and you can see here in this section I haven't quite spread the resin far enough. So that dome will go from end to end, and there won't be any of this difference that you can see here. But then it ends up all nice and see-through. You can see what we're going to end up with. So this was the top that I did 2 days ago, 48 hours ago. That's all dry now. And then this is the surface that I've just completed. You can already see how that's going to end up looking when we're done, and how polished and beautiful does that look. Ignoring the bubbles in there. Just pretend they don't exist. We are 5 of 6 sides done. Final step will be to do a final coat on the bottom with some silver glitter, and that will wrap up this piece. And again, we are just ignoring those air bubbles. Super excited to be adding the final coat of resin on this piece. It's a beautiful silver coat. You can see me just adding things really slowly and making sure that all the surface is covered. We had some spillage from the flood coat on top. It ended up dripping, and I stepped out to go out for dinner and come back to this mess. There are another couple of drops on the side which I've managed to clean up. So what we're going to do is I'm basically just scratching it off because it's still kind of soft resin. It hasn't fully cured, which is lucky. So I'm just going to scratch it off and getting as much off as we can, and then using some acetone to just gently wipe off any muck that's left behind. And because it is not fully cured yet, it's coming up a treat. Alright, here's my acetone. Here is the offending parts, and I'll just give it a good little rub, and it should start to dissolve that uncured resin. Guys, we finally made it. This is the end of Project Rose and Quartz, and here she is. Is it perfect? No. Did I learn lots? Absolutely, and we're going to get into that right now. So, learning curve number 1, the flash cure. That was a result of using a small pour kit to do a deep pour. So small pour kits are for very shallow molds. Deep pour kits are for very deep molds. When you use a shallow pour kit or a small pour kit to do a deep pour, you will definitely run the risk of having a flash cure, which is what happened here, and completely my fault. So you can see in here all of the trapped air bubbles, and those got trapped in there because this little guy cured so fast. So normally a pour takes 24 hours to cure. This took like 7 minutes. So when you add a small pour kit to do a deep pour, what ends up happening is it cures way too fast because the exothermic reaction just catapults the process. And so this got really hot, really quick, and solidified super fast, trapped all the air bubbles in. Some other issues that can happen when something flash cures is it can completely yellow or murky the actual resin. We kind of escaped that for the most part, which is lucky for us. I've read stories of resin flash curing and actually like smoking up, so we were really lucky that that didn't happen. But that was definitely learning curve number 1, and I will be using a deep pour kit for future deep pours. If you don't have a deep pour kit and you only have a small pour kit, you can definitely do something like this. You just have to do it in layers, no bigger than about 1 centimeter thick. Even that might be pushing it. Learning curve number 2. I didn't have a cube mold, so I got a little bit kind of MacGyver-y and did one out of cardboard and packing tape, which kind of worked okay, to be fair. The issue was that it needed fixing on the surface. So what we ended up having to do was having to do a flood coat on top of each of the 6 surfaces of this cube. And whilst it finished up okay, it's still just an extra step that is, number 1, time consuming, number 2, allows for more errors to happen. You saw yesterday with that final glitter coat, it actually ended up leaking down. You always run the risk of that happening to your piece. Luckily, the sides that it ran down were fully cured, and it was really easy to kind of remove that semi-cured resin full of glitter, mind you. But definitely, if you're not using a silicone mold and you're MacGyvering something, or throwing together something, you need to be prepared to add more steps to your process to get it perfected. Learning curve number 3, the sculpture itself. I absolutely loved being able to do the sculpture outside of the mold. So by hot gluing everything on the bottom of the cardboard, and then having that as the base, building the structure around it, and then doing the pour, that would have worked really well had we not had the flash cure. Everything was in place, nothing was floating upwards. The only thing was that because of the nature of flowers with all of their beautiful layers of the petals, lots of air gets trapped in there. So it needed that time for the resin to pour in and push up the bubbles up to the surface. Obviously with the flash cure, we ended up trapping the bubbles in time and space. The other thing I would probably do if I was just doing like a single flower or a single rose to eliminate as many air bubbles as possible is to probably dunk them in a resin first before placing them in whatever piece I'm resining. But did thoroughly enjoy doing that sculpture on cardboard first. And to be fair, the bits on the bottom where the hot glue was attached to the cardboard weren't too hard to remove and came out really well after another layer of resin on top of that. So it's all fixable. Definitely will be doing that process again. The last learning curve would be the glitter. I'm really loving the way it looks from the top, but unfortunately you can't see much on the bottom there. So I think if I was to do a piece like this again, I would go to the trouble of creating some form of mold and doing a little bit of a thicker pour on the bottom so that the base is a little bit of a thicker glitter base. But it looks really pretty over the top. So I've definitely enjoyed the learning process associated with making this cube, and I'm honestly looking forward to doing another project in a similar way, just with deport resin this time. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for experimenting with me, and I will see you in the next one.